Okay, James, so we've taken Fred for a bit of a walk. We've diagnosed some of the issues he has. What's the next step from here?
Next step is to do the physical adjustments. With chiropractic care, we assess the history as well as conformation of the horse, and then assess the physical findings as well. All of that coming together to form a diagnosis that we can work with. So with Fred, luckily he's quite good. We have done work on him in the past, and the good thing about chiropractic is that the effects are long-lasting. So once the changes are made from an injury, the effects do tend to last for a long time. So with a horse like Fred, who's owned by my wife, we maintain him quite well.
Okay. Well, I'm going to hop out of the way now. I'm going to let you do your adjustments and see how Fred is.
Excellent. So just as an idea of what we work with, this is an example of the tailbone as well as the 6th lumbar vertebrae that we have for a horse. So the tailbone sits in that general area. The 6th lumbar vertebrae comes in this area. So if you palpate your horse and you can feel the spinous processes, those bones sticking out of the horse's backs, that's these processes right here. So as you can tell, they're very long. On a person, they're only about that long. So working with horses is actually much easier than working with people because of the physical levers that we have to work with. As long as we're quick with our adjustments, the bones move quite easy. One of the criticisms that we have as horse chiropractors is that it's impossible to actually treat the joints of the horse's spine because they're so far down. But what they fail to realize is that when you have levers like this and you use physics to your advantage, it's actually very, very easy. The joints are down below, just as a typical joint moves, the bones do have that capability of moving on each other. If we look from the front, the canal, that's where the spinal cord is housed, and then of course the discs come on the bodies of the vertebrae. So we have these big joint spaces, that's where the fluid is encapsulated that I was talking about before. So when we move these bones relative to each other, it causes a vacuum in the joint spaces, which then allows that gas to be released into a bubble and makes the cracking sound. Very impressive when it happens. So in order, as an example of chiropractic work on a horse, we can just put these down, and we use just a stand to have ourselves above the horse, and then it's just as if a person was laying on a table. So they have the 4 legs to support their spine. When you're on the table supports us. So their spine is just there ready for us to work on. Of course, when you work with a horse's spine, there's quite a bit of give to it, quite a bit of elasticity, and that's what we're looking for. We're trying to get as much elasticity through the horse's spine as possible. That then takes the pressure off the nervous system, allows the horses to work to their maximum. As you saw with Fred walking, he's quite even behind. The sacroiliacs that I was talking about, they were quite even. If you take time to look at your own horses after you're watching this video, most of you will see that one hip is higher than the other. It's very common in horses. It can be due to lots of situations, either an accident or maybe the rider is crooked as well. You can imagine if the rider is crooked, the horse is going to follow that lead and they're going to be crooked with us. That creates a problem after a while. So if you do see that your horse is crooked when they walk away from you, then a sacroiliac problem is possible, and it's a good idea to have a chiropractor take a look. As an example of an adjustment, there is a small subluxation here on the offside of Fred's sacroiliac. So we'll just do an example just so you know what horse chiropractic is all about. We take a contact on that bone, which is the top of the hip. It's called the ilium. And when you know the line of the joints and the way that you want to go, it's a very quick movement, like that. Just by doing that, it drops that bone down into place. There's a small audible cavitation, a small cracking sound, and that then is that joint moving. You then have a long lever here, so you can set that joint properly, just like that. And you saw what the force went through the horse's muscles, so you can see the amount of force that we were using. It's a small amount of force, but it's very quick. Force equals mass times acceleration, so as long as you're quick, you can develop a lot of force. And then working through the spine, the thoracolumbar area is a very important mechanical point because the power from this hind leg has to come through here to the front end. So we'll just free that up. Beautiful. Then of course we can look at the horse's front end. The saddle area is very important because the ribs, where the saddle sits, those ribs, they're like fingers, but they come up this way. They can pop up like that. So we want to make sure that none of those are subluxated. Just by pressing down this way, you can basically see if your horse is sore in that area. If the horse drops when you do that, your saddle is probably fitting too tight, or you do have a rib injury there of some sort. It's important to get that checked out. With the saddle fitting, if you've ever had a rib out of place yourself, you know it's very, very excruciating. So you want to make sure you get that taken care of. Get your local saddle fitter out to make sure that your saddle fits properly. It's the best thing you can do for your horse's health. So you just make sure that that area is nice and free. You can palpate down along the girth, see if there's any tenderness down there. If the horse is really flinching and cold backed as well when you get on, it's very important to get them checked out.
Okay.
And now we'll assess the horse's neck. The basic way to do it is just to raise the horse's head up and down. The possibilities are that the head will go this way or that way, or they'll get to a certain point and either lock or fly backwards. If any of those happen, then you know that there's a subluxation in the top of the neck. Their neck is the exact same as ours. If we have a pressure point causing a migraine headache here, you can imagine if you press here and the horse is very tender, they probably have a headache as well. So by assessing that top vertebrae, you can then decide which way it has to be adjusted. Of course, it takes years to learn, but as an example, we'll imagine Freddie's head is perfect, but we'll imagine that this top vertebrae is rotated up this way. Okay? So we take a contact and we're just going to drop it back down again. So we just rest his head on our shoulder. And like that. As you can tell, it's very gentle, and even though that bone didn't have to move very far, that is a very typical adjustment. And it's a very typical reaction as well. Horses enjoy being adjusted. After the adjustments, they get an endorphin rush. So it's a fantastic time to do any performance, any racing, anything like that, because endorphins are a natural painkiller, of course. So you know yourself, when you walk into the chiropractic office, you feel fantastic. It's important to let your horse have the exact same feeling.
Okay, James, that was fantastic. Hopefully now we've all got a much better idea of how equine chiropractic works.
Thank you, Jono. One final thing is probably, as a bit of advice, use someone, if you're going to use an equine chiropractor, use someone who's trained properly, either a chiropractor who does specialize with horses, or a vet who's done a chiropractic course. It's very important that we use people that are trained to work with your horse's nervous system. It's a very delicate system, and sometimes people that don't have the right training get in and do cause a bit of injury by calling themselves chiropractors. They give the entire profession a bit of a bad name. So use qualified people, and you'll have a great time with your horse.
Great. Thanks very much for being on Allied Equine TV, James.
Thank you, John.
Okay, so that's almost it for another episode of Allied Equine TV. Now, as a very special offer to our viewers, Dr. James, just because he's a really nice guy, he's going to offer a free online chiropractic assessment of your horse. Now, this is how it's going to work. All you need to do is make a short video, 1 or 2 minutes, then just go to the AlliedEquine.com homepage and click on subscription. Now, this is also free. You just fill in your details, send them through to us, and then we'll send you all the information you need to send your video in, and then Dr. James can do the assessment and give you all the feedback you need. So that's it from this episode of Allied Equine TV. We'll see you next time.